I'm Parry, and I am the Capilano University Learning Specialist. In this video, we are going to look at what you can do before, during, and after class to effectively capture and learn the material presented in lectures. You might be wondering why I'm using the term note-making rather than note-taking. This is because note-taking implies a passive process of mindlessly copying down information, while note-making implies an active process that involves active listening, critical thinking, summarizing, and paraphrasing. This video will show you how to become an effective and successful note maker. Whether you are taking notes by hand or using an electronic device, it's important to attend class and actively make notes for several reasons. First, you cannot make notes without keeping your eyes and ears on the speaker. Note-making helps you to concentrate on what is being taught and prevents you from daydreaming. Second, students who make notes during a lecture typically have better recall of the information at the end of the class. Actively listening to, thinking about, and writing down information makes your neurons fire and start to wire together. Third, good note-making involves summarizing and paraphrasing what you hear. Research shows that when we personalize information and write it down using our own words and in our own handwriting, we tend to remember it better. Finally, and perhaps the most important reason for making notes, is that it provides a written record of the lecture that can be used for later review. While the act of note-making starts the memory process, without reviewing this information on a regular basis, the memory will quickly fade. We'll talk more about this later in the video. As I mentioned in the introduction, good note-making involves applying strategies before, during, and after a lecture. One strategy that can be applied before a lecture is pre-reading. Pre-reading involves quickly reading the assigned chapter or the chapter summary before you attend the related lecture. Pre-reading will give you some prior knowledge of the material to be presented in class, which will make it easier for you to understand the lecture and make good notes. This strategy is especially helpful if you have little prior knowledge of the subject, English is not your first language, or you find it hard to listen and take notes at the same time. The key to good note-making during class is to organize the information in your notes in such a way that they are easy to make sense of and study from later. One way of achieving this is by taking notes in outline format. As can be seen, outline format involves using a system of indentation. In this example, the main topics, encoding, storage, and retrieval, are flushed to the left and are underlined and labeled. Then, the main ideas related to each topic are indented slightly underneath and are indicated with a dash. Finally, if a main idea is expanded further with minor details, these details are then indented further under the main idea. This can be seen in the sections on encoding and storage. Taking notes this way requires you to listen actively for the relationship between ideas and then capture this in your notes. While this requires a bit of thought and effort on your part, the payoff will come when you return to your notes and can easily identify the main topics and supporting details you need to learn. When class is over, it's fairly common for students to put their notes away only to revisit them prior to an exam. As mentioned earlier, the problem with this practice is that according to the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, we forget 50% of what we learn within 1 hour of learning it. Consequently, it's important to find time as soon as you can after a lecture to revisit and review your notes to reduce the rate of forgetting and increase your retention of the material. While this will take a little bit of time each day, it will be time well spent. When you review your notes, it's important that you engage in activities that force you to rehearse and practice retrieving information from your memory. The best way to do this is to read your notes through carefully and create a set of questions that your notes answer. If you make the margin of your notes about 2.5 inches wide, you can then place the questions you create in the margin next to the answers as demonstrated on the slide. To practice retrieving the answers from your memory, work one question at a time until you can answer the question without looking at your notes. When you can do this, move to the next question in the margin until you have mastered all the material. This is a great strategy for predicting possible test questions and getting feedback about what you know and what material needs more review. Another variation on this system is to put keywords from the notes in the margin instead of study questions. You then cover up the right-hand side and practice recalling all the material in your notes that pertain to the keyword in the margin. Again, work one keyword at a time until you can recall all the important points that pertain to each of the keywords. Once you have successfully stored the information from the lecture in your memory, if you want to be sure you can recall it come exam time, you will need to revisit and practice retrieving the information every 2 to 4 weeks. Research tells us that while information we learn deeply does stay in memory for a long time, we cannot always access this information easily unless we practice retrieving it on a regular basis. One good way to practice retrieving information is by working with a study partner or a study group. In closing, remember that good note-making involves pre-reading, recording the lecture in an organized, meaningful way, and reviewing the material after class. The time you invest each week doing this will pay off extensively come exam time, as you will be refreshing previously learned material rather than trying to learn it for the very first time. If you need more information about or more personalized help with your note-making, please make an appointment with the Learning Specialist by calling 604-984-1744 or by dropping by the Counseling and Learning Support Department in Birch 267.